Hello everybody, TyronnCannon here, and welcome to a brand new series on my channel. It is TyronnCannon's Cricket Captain Academy, where I teach you guys how to play Cricket Captain. I'm sure some of you do know how to play the game, but the purpose of this series is to make your life a little bit easier when playing Cricket Captain. Now, we've just picked Northamptonshire. They're my favourite English team to play as. This series is going to be mainly focusing on team building, how to do training, how to keep everybody fit, and ultimately winning each of the competitions that we're in. We're not going to be playing in the 100. We're going to purely focus on the county side of it. So the county championship, the One Day Cup, and the T20 Blast. So we are going to build a team from the ground up in this series. Let's get into the cricket. Welcome to Northamptonshire County Cricket Club. Your first task as captain of the team is to decide if you want to sign any new players which are currently available to help strengthen your squad for the forthcoming season. So entering the player contract area, now we've got $26,500 to play with. $26,500 to play with. Now the first place that I generally go is to the budget section to see how much we've got in the budget. So we've got 30,000 in coaching, youth team, and physio. Basically, I automatically up the youth team to 50,000 because we want the best youth prospects coming through to our team. Youth players, I can't stress this enough. They are overpowered. Once you get them and you find good ones and you develop them, they become really, really good. So keep your youth team rating at 50,000 always. Just because you want that investment in there. Now, we will have a look around seeing who's available. Generally, as a rule, I sign players from the age between 16 up until they're about 29. I rarely sign players over 30 just because they finish their peak of development around the age of 27. And then they have those prime years of between sort of 27 to 30, early 30s. And then they sort of tail off towards the end of their careers. So I sort of like having a big squad with lots of young players who are only going to get better. And sort of once you get further and further into the career mode, you have this massive talented squad. And if you can afford to pay them all, that's fantastic. But the first place we're going to look is looking at our squad to see what we have, essentially. We've got some good players. Our expiring contracts for this year are Rob Cuff, I don't know, Cough, for 35,000. Gareth Berg, who will probably retire at season's end. He's 41 years old. He's an expiring contract for 23,000. I think there's one more, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, White for 35,000. So that's what, 93,000. That's going to come off the books at the end of next year, before we terminate any contracts. So we already know going into next season we're going to have at least $90,000 to spend. And obviously all the overseas contracts are 1-year contracts, so they all come off the books as well. So this is strictly for the first sort of season. Then once we come around to the second season, we'll do a contract version of that as well. So when we want to do an evaluation of the squad, we can see that we've got 2 wicket keepers. We'd probably ideally like to get a third, just in case there is an injury to both of them. But we've got plenty of middle order players. There's not really much we can do because we've only got $6,500 to spend. But we can. Where's my voice gone? I'm just having a quick sip of tea. Excuse me. That's better. We do have we've got 3 opening bats. We might try and sign one more if we can, but we can also adjust the budget to see how we go. We've got plenty of all-rounders, and I think our bowling lineup is good. So ideally, with our players, bowling-wise, we want them to be averaging under 30 at the highest. If you can get them under 25, that's awesome. And for batters, you want them to be averaging over 40 at county level. Obviously, if they're over international, 45 and over is great. But if you can get them averaging over 40, so Vasconcelos 36 is his average. That's probably on the lower end. So a couple of seasons in, he's a relatively young player, but a couple of seasons in, he might not be in the starting 11. But we want to look at domestically, see what we've got. I can already see that there's one player worth $56,000. When you're looking at players at face value, the players that are more valuable in terms of their salary tend to be higher. Each player has a current ability and a potential ability. It means that when their salary is high, it means they have a high current ability, generally speaking. So we'll have a look at Banks, Liam Banks. He hasn't had a great start to his career, sort of batting-wise. He is a batter. But he's only 22, and for young players, sort of between the ages 16 to 24, the best statistic you can tell if they're going to be good is their second 11 stats. So if you look at their second 11 stats for Liam Banks, he averages 66 with the bat, which equates to about 45 at first class level, I believe. Just through my experience playing the game. Second 11, he averages 47 and 35 at T20 level at 3-day level. So that's pretty good. Now, if we did have a spare $56,000 lying around, I probably would sign him for a 1-year deal just to see how he goes for the season. But a lot of these other players, I would stay away from. They don't look like they're up to standard, really. I did see one player down here, Pillins, who I would give a 1-year deal to. He's $34,000 salary. He's 30 years old. So he's right really at the prime of his career. I'd give him a 1-year deal considering he is over 30. But those two, just looking at this list, are the only two players that I would actually consider signing. The other ones I don't see worth it. They would just be filling up space in the squad. And the one thing you want is you want the squad. You want as much sort of sense in the squad as you can get. You don't want to waste a dollar, basically, is the way that I see it. You want it to be as basically financially, for it to make sense. You know why each player is in their spot. Because Northamptonshire, like, there's two A. Russells at 19 years old. I'm pretty sure they're the same name, Alex Russell and Alex Russell. I'm not sure if that's a Northamptonshire thing or not. But like Thurston, whoever gave him a 3-year deal, he's averaging 26 with the bat. I don't know. Emilio Gay, he's a younger player, so give him time to develop. But yeah, it's like, this is a contract that I would not sign. So he's probably going to get terminated at the end of the season. I'm going to terminate a lot of these contracts just to give us more money. When you do terminate a contract, you basically get half of the money back immediately to your budget, and then the other half is left out of your budget until the contract expires. So, for example, we've got, we'll go back to Thurston. You'll get $12,500 back immediately, and then once the contract has expired in 3 years' time, you'll get that other $12,500 back. So just as basically a safety net, so you don't just cancel all of your contracts. It's just a safety net for the players. Anyway, now that we've looked at the domestic signings, we're going to look at the youth. We're going to see who's available. I've already seen 2 players that I'm potentially interested in. We'll scroll down to the bowlers. None of the bowlers look particularly helpful. Now, the one player that I would likely sign is Marlowe. He's 19 years old. His salary is $26,500. Billy Marlowe, he's 19 years old. Averages 55 at second 11 1-day level and 26 as an opener at T20 level, at 3-day level. At second 11 level. Ash, who's this? Tom Ash. He's also averages 50 plus. Not as good at the limited over stuff, but the one reason I would sign Marlowe alone, just even looking at the 3-day stuff compared to Ash, is his age. Ash is probably the better player now, but Marlowe has the potential to be a better player in the long run. So age is a very underrated attribute in this game when it comes to developing players. if you can get a player at 16 years old who averages 45 compared to a player who's 20 years old and averages 50, I would sign the 16-year-old every time, because I know that 16-year-old has more of a development curve. He's going to be a lot better going forward rather than the 20-year-old. So we are going to sign Marlowe to I would give Marlowe a 2-year contract. I rarely give out 3-year contracts unless we've got a prospect that's, 18 years old, averages 65, 70 at 3-day level. Those are the type of players you give out 3-year contracts to. Young players who have a chance at making it, I would give them a 2-year deal. And basically anyone that's over 30 or anyone who I only want for a year just to see how they go, I'll give them a 1-year deal. That way you're sort of a lot more balanced with how your team's going. So I'm going to offer Marlowe a contract in a second. We're going to go back to the budget. I'm actually going to reduce the coaching for this season down to 10,000 instead of 30. At 30,000, you're coaching. We do coaching in a separate academy session, but basically what the coaching budget means, at 30,000 you get 8 coaching sessions available to you per week. At 50,000 you get 10. At 10,000 you get 6. So it's basically how many coaching sessions you get, not the quality of the coaching per se. So we're going to lower that to 10, so we have the funds to sign Marlowe to a 2-year deal. And one last thing we're going to touch on is availability. Now this really applies to the overseas players and a couple of domestic players depending on where you are playing. If you're playing in England, you will have to deal with the 100 when it comes around. I think, Josh Cobb, he's got 82% availability. That just means when the 100 comes around, he's not going to be available for 18% of the time. He's available for all of the county championship and the one-day stuff. Just for when the 100's on, he won't be available for our team. But we can see here we've got Will Young, who's available 52% of the time. We've got Neesham, who's available 64%. Chris Lynn's actually available 100% of the time. Now, what this means, it means that Will Young is probably playing in overseas tournaments somewhere, be that in the IPL, probably not for Will Young, but he'll be playing in the New Zealand domestic tournaments and that kind of thing. Neesham's probably going to be playing in the IPL. But this doesn't include international play, I believe. So, for example, you can sign a player who has... Let's just find a player who's a good example. Let's go with Cleaver. So he's a wicket keeper. His average is 41 the bat. He's at 30 years old, so he's a player that I would consider signing, as we do need a wicket keeper. We just don't have the funds, unfortunately. But he's got 100% availability, so he's available for all of our games. But that 100% availability doesn't include international games. So if he was to be called up for New Zealand, that 100% would still remain as 100%, if that makes sense. That basically doesn't allow for international games. But if you go to someone like David Warner, you click on David Warner, it'll say away for internationals and the IPL. I don't actually think that's correct. He's away for the IPL, but it doesn't actually include the international fixtures. Yes, he will be away on international fixtures, but he's available 43% of the time, so that's not somebody I'd really sign anyway. The most I would probably allow is maybe 80% if they're 80% available, but anybody lower than sort of 75, I would just stay away from. They're just not worth signing, just because they're never going to play for you, and you can better spend that money elsewhere. So Bracewell, I would sign. Cleaver, I would sign. Felukuao, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. If his batting and bowling average was switched around, I would probably sign him. But someone like Shakib Al Hassan Hasaranga, I probably wouldn't sign. Cummins, Zampa. Zampa, I probably would sign on a T20 deal. Probably not for first class. But that basically wraps up the beginning of the squad building for this series. We've offered Marlowe a contract, which we will accept. Well, he has accepted, I should say. And then for the next, we're going to exit now because there's nothing really more for us to do. The next Cricket Captain Academy session, I believe, will be for training and the impacts of that. So leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch up with you next time for some more Cricket Captain Academy. See you guys then.